The seated settling technique is a technique I use to support children to settle with comfort. It's a transitional stage to settling on their own in the cot. Once we have our baby in our arms and they're starting to settle and starting to feel a little bit heavy, haven't quite fallen asleep yet, we can transfer them gently into the cot, placing their feet at the lower end of the cot, the feet for security. The top end, we have our hand against their head and a hand on the chest. We allow them to settle. The idea of having the hand on top of their head is to mimic the child being in our arms. It offers security. Once we have our hand on their chest, we can gradually move the hand away from the top of the head and keep the hand positioned on their chest. We can move the hand from 5 fingers down to 3 and then down to 1. Before we move the last finger, whilst we wait for our child to settle, add a little bit of pressure to the finger and then remove it immediately. If we don't do this, I find children are quite sensitive to light touch and will notice the finger suddenly missing. Whereas if you add a little bit of pressure, they don't seem to notice it having disappeared. Step away from the cot. If your baby becomes unsettled and cries, you can approach the cot again and put your hand on their chest. If they're not responding to this and becoming more distressed, you can gently reposition your baby by lifting them into a seated position on the cot. You can pat them gently with your forehand and wait for them to settle. You can also lean over the cot gently with your head touching your baby to reassure them. Mindful of your breathing, you can breathe loudly and slowly. As they start to calm and start to fall asleep, you can very gradually lower them slowly, keeping your hand behind their head, offering the support to their neck. And with your hand, just gently lower them to the laying down position. Slip your hand away from the back of the head and position it on the top of their head. And repeat with your hand remaining on their chest. Reduce the hand down to 3 fingers, down to 1 finger. You can count to 10. Observe your baby's settling skills. If they look like they're settling, give them a moment to settle further before removing your hand. If you're able to, move away from the cot, because sometimes children look up and see parents, and that creates a little bit of anxiety. It's best to step away and keep your hand in the cot if you're able to. I usually use this technique for 2 or 3 days max before placing your baby in the cot and trying to support them with just your hand.